Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and welcome to the third video in a series of game development tutorials on how to make your own 3D platform game in Unity 6. In this tutorial we'll be covering prefabs, level design and music. Remember to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay up to date with every tutorial I upload. Feel free to leave a comment and drop a like. I also have a Patreon page where you can help be a part of this channel, and you'll also find all the scripts and the assets to this series there too, along with plenty of other things. You can also now join as a free member. Now, on with the tutorial. So up till now, we have this, and this is pretty cool. You know, this is the beginnings of our level. What we need to do now is create some prefabs. Let me explain what a prefab is. It is a collection of objects that you can manipulate all together. It can be, for example, all these cubes in one single object. It could be a model of a character with the eyes, hair, all different actual objects, but all encompassed inside one single prefab. And that is very useful when it comes to game design, like what we're creating here, because we want to have, jumps to jump over, ledges to jump onto, all that kind of thing. So this is where a lot of the prefabs come into their own. So what we're going to do is we're going to create just a couple of prefabs, and then we're going to build a small section of this level based on that prefab. So I want to change all of these back to a nice blue color. And you'll notice as we've duplicated things here, they've all kind of added 1, 2, 3 or 4, all that kind of stuff to it. And that is useful, but it can get a little bit cumbersome at times. So all I'm doing now is I'm duplicating a couple of times and creating this section here. What you can do is if you hold Control and select all these objects in your scene, you can hold Control, press D and duplicate all of them. So now we have a ledge which is currently 3 by 4. Let's make this one single game object that we can play around with. So what we'll do is we will go to Game Object and let's go to Create Empty, which is the very first option. What this will do is it will create a plain, simple, empty game object with only the very basic component that it needs, which is transform. We can call it anything we want. Let's call this blue 3x4 because it's 3 by 4. And what we'll do now is we will take this first one all the way to the last one, drag and drop into blue 3 by 4. Now we're going to drag them out again in just a moment, but you'll be able to see that blue 3 by 4 now has everything in itself. So yes, we could still move ground around on its own. However, if we took blue 3 by 4, we can move the whole thing together. So it's all one singular game object. So if we put the position back to 0, 0, 0, that is exactly where all of our amazing little things will be. However, one thing you may have noticed is that we're not actually middle now. Things have moved around. What we need to do is we need to undo. Like I said earlier, we're going to remove everything out of that again, just to kind of illustrate what's going on here. Now, all of these are center when it comes to some of the axis. Obviously, the position on the X and the Z is different, but everything on the Y is normal. What we really need to do is move this blue 3 by 4 back to center and make sure it is at least inside the objects it should be in. Because if I undo again, you can see that this object is just randomly placed there. And that's no good for us. So whenever we're creating the prefab, we need to make sure that the position of this is in the correct place. And I think that should be fine just there. You could move it to the middle, I guess. I don't think it matters too much, but it is inside this particular object. So now if we take all of our cubes again and bring them into blue 3 by 4, we can see, perfect. That'll do the trick just fine. It's more manipulatable as it is. But this still isn't a prefab. What we need to do is create a folder specifically for these prefabs. So let's go to our assets down here. Let's right click, create, and let's go folder, and we'll call this prefabs. Now what we need to do is go in that folder and then drag and drop blue 3 by 4 into here. And what this will do is create a new asset. You'll notice all of this has now turned blue. that's exactly what we want, because what it is doing is it's creating its own game object and saying that this is now a prefab. So we can drag and drop this into our scene, and there we go. We can move this around as we need to, set the position where we need it to be, and then we can move it into position where we need it to be, and we could duplicate it, bring it to here, duplicate it, bring it to here, and then basically do whatever you want with it. However, just because this is a prefab now doesn't mean to say that we can make it a different prefab. So for example, these are blue. What we can do is right click on it and select prefab, and what you can do here is unpack completely, and this will turn it into not a prefab. So we can now manipulate this that was a prefab into something different. For example, let's now take this and let's add some different materials to a couple of the bricks in here. Okay, so let's add it like this, and let's have that there and that there. So this is a different type of prefab now. So let's have this as multi 3x4. And now what we need to do is go back to our prefabs folder, drag and drop multi 3x4 to make it its own prefab. And you can see that we have two different prefabs now. Click the arrow to close it up. Let's zoom out just a touch, and then we can drag and drop this right there. Set the 0, 0, 0, and then move it into position, like so. So already you can see that this level is coming together quite nicely. And although we haven't really touched on cameras or anything yet, if you click on game view, you'll be able to see it like that. We will get into cameras and all that kind of stuff in the next couple of tutorials, because obviously it's very important. But what I would recommend at this point is just create more of these prefabs. You know, if you want to create some awesome looking prefabs, they don't have to be that shape as well. In fact, what we'll quickly do is we will hold Control, duplicate that one. I'm going to bring it to here, and then I'm going to right click, prefab, and unpack completely. And let's remove some of these bricks. So let's make this a different shape. Let's make it like this. This can be an L shape. So let's take this one, move it to here, again, to there, to there, to there, do that to there, to there. Let's change some of these materials. So let's have that as red. Let's have some more blue. Let's have another orange there. Let's have an orange there. And let's make that one green, I guess. And let's call this one L and then 4x4. So there's the L shape 4x4. Into prefabs, drag and drop. There's our next prefab. So now let's move this one into position. And then let's take this one again. Hold Control, press D. Oh, no, we didn't want to do that one. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to actually put it in the game. So place it there. 0, 0, 0. But let's rotate this. Let's take this prefab and let's rotate it by 90 degrees on the Y. There we go. And I guess we could do it again. Let's do 180. So then we can place this comfortably like so. So now you can see, using these prefabs, that is how quickly and easily you can kind of put a level together. And for fun and games, let's just bring another blue one there. Let's bring it center so it matches. And then let's bring this all the way over here to there, I guess. So there is our level coming together. Now, I did mention that we're also going to have some music in this. So what we need to do is we need to import our level music. But we don't have a folder for that. We need to keep things neat and tidy. So right click, create, folder, and we'll have this as audio. Inside this folder, we're going to create a new folder. So we're going to have this as BGM, and that is just short for background music. And inside this folder, I'm going to drag and drop this audio. And as always, if you go to the pinned comment or the link in the description, you can go and download this absolutely free, and you can use this piece of music however you want to. There's no copyright to it, no license, no nothing. It's all yours. And we now need to put this into this game. Remember though, you do need to unzip it. So what we'll do is we'll go to game object, create empty, and we'll call this level controls. Now, this object will become very, very important later on. So because we'll be using it quite a bit, let's actually move its position in the hierarchy so we can always access it at the top. Drag and drop, place it at the top. Easy, awesome. Now within this object itself, I'm going to zero out the position so it's dead center. And I'm going to right click on it now, and then I'm going to click on create empty. I'm going to call this audio. So this is another empty game object inside an empty game object. Keep things tied in your hierarchy is always important too. So inside there as well, let's create another empty object, and we'll call this one BGM. And then in there again, yep, I know it sounds crazy, but it's keeping everything neat and tidy. Create empty, and we'll have this as BGM1. We are going to import more level music as we go further along, so just keep that in mind. What we'll do is drag and drop this music file onto BGM1, and then you'll see an audio source component appear over here. Now, you can play around with a couple of things on here. We'll play around with just a couple, but what we want to do is have play on awake as ticked and loop ticked. What that will do is it will play the music as soon as the level starts, and will also loop it round and round and round as necessary. You can change the volume and the pitch. So if I press play now, this is the first time I was doing this, we will go into game view and we'll be able to hear our music and kind of see our level a little bit. You have to give Unity a second on its first build, but there we go, that's fine, it's working. There we go. So there is our level music. And as mentioned, you can change the pitch. There we go. So you can use something like that to kind of gauge the style of your level. You don't have to use this audio file that I've put here. You can use your own music. You can use music you've found somewhere that, you know, or you've created, entirely up to you. But like I say, the audio files that we use in this series you can use for free. There's no license, no copyright on them. But the pitch in and of itself will kind of change how it sounds, and you could hear that live in the game itself. But did you notice that when we pressed play and came out of the game view, the pitch reset back to 1? Worth noting that when you are in game view, if you change anything, it will reset to back how it was before you pressed play to go into game view. But ultimately, like I say, go into game view and you can hear the music, play around with the pitch, and then perhaps set it once you're done. So let's say you're not happy with the pitch set as 1, set it as 1.2, so it's a bit faster. You press stop, it resets. However, if you change it now to 1.2 and press play, it will remain 1.2. Let's make sure it does. And there we go. So it's up to you how you want it to appear in your game. So I will leave it like that, and I think that should do the trick just fine. So I think as a game now, this whole level is coming together quite nicely. Next tutorial, what we'll do is we're going to add in some collectibles, and we're going to start dealing with coding. We're going to use C#. I know we haven't got a player in here yet. I want to introduce you to C# before we bring a player in, because player controls, that's going to be quite a long tutorial because there's a lot to talk about, and we just need to get a little bit of introduction to C# programming before we get to it. So collectibles and C# programming is coming up next. Remember to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay up to date with every tutorial I upload, and I'll see you next time.